World leaders are absolutely furious at Donald Trump after he has removed sanctions from a number of Russian banks after MAGA Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said that Donald Trump was going to increase sanctions against Russia. Of course, Donald Trump was not going to do that. You also have the Premier of British Columbia in Canada saying that if FIFA wants to move its games to British Columbia for the World Cup, Premier David Eby says British Columbia is ready to go. He certainly understands that the world does not want to send their teams or send their fans to the United States. Also, we're seeing a number of companies from across the world turn to France when it comes to rare earth mineral deals as a result of the United States totally capitulating its role in the world, and the United States allowing Russia to take over a significant lithium field in Ukraine. We see French President Emanuel Macron at a United Nations event yesterday where he gave a powerful speech as well, just completely obliterating the way the United States is conducting itself internationally. And I think France has really emerged, and French President Emmanuel Macron has really emerged as a unifying force between Europe, Australia, and Canada as well. Here he is, the French president at the United Nations. He doesn't even have to mention Trump by name, but he basically goes after the entire world view of the Trump regime and how bad it is for the world and for developing nations. Play this clip.
When we talk about development financing, it's about the ability to live together on a planet, to set priorities. And rather than building walls or imposing tariffs or closing our digital spaces, well, to measure how much we are interdependent. Poverty displaces the most vulnerable, makes victims of all traffics, and creates uncontrollable migration flows leading to conflict and despair. Therefore, addressing the issue of development, finding sustainable funding, and having increased collective efficiency is a necessity that benefits everyone. This is the reason why France organized this new global financial pact in 2023, which led to the creation of the Pact for Prosperity, People and Planet at the end of the summit, held together, now hosted at the OECD and bringing together 73 countries.
Yeah, powerful stuff right there. And then in another speech as well over the past day or so, French President Emmanuel Macron sets the record straight when it comes to Ukraine. I mean, you see Trump and all of these right-wing pro-Russia propagandists in the United States acting like Zelensky is the dictator. And the French President Emmanuel Macron says, what are you talking about? Putin is the dictator, and people like Putin are the dictator, and we need to stand up to them. Here, watch this.
One should not buy into the arguments I hear every way. But the Ukrainian president was elected through free elections in Ukraine. He was not at all the favorite. I remember it like it was yesterday. And so he's a president elected from a free system. This is not the case with Vladimir Putin, who kills his opponents and manipulates his elections for a long time. Unfortunately, this is not the case in other countries around the world. He then had to implement, because there was war in his country, martial law. Do you think he can organize presidential or legislative elections in a country where several million Ukrainian men and women have fled for their safety? In a country where he has mobilized several million others who are on the front, where there are thousands of deaths and injuries per day, and where a whole band of his territory is conquered by Russia? What are we talking about? Do you think that we, in the same situation, would be amused to hold elections? He cannot hold elections. So, if we want free elections in Ukraine, well, a lasting peace in Ukraine is necessary. That's the prerequisite. Everything they do beforehand, they manipulate. And what is the project of some? I know it very well. A ceasefire that will not be respected. Quickly, elections to manipulate them. It's not a good idea. So yes, President Zelensky, he is legitimate, and we want more democracy in Ukraine in the long term, thanks to a lasting peace. And President Zelensky wants democracy in Ukraine too, since he is its product.
I think another thing that's important to note And of course, our media here in the United States just glosses over it because, frankly, corporate news in the U.S. is just as bad as North Korean propaganda is in North Korea. But do you remember? I mean, it was last week and Donald Trump says he gave Iran permission to bomb the U.S. airbase in Qatar. Could you imagine former President Biden welcomes an airstrike against our military base in Qatar? You think that would get front page coverage? I tend to think that it absolutely would. Look, the Czech president is absolutely pissed at Donald Trump as well. Peter Pavel. Here's what he had to say for Trump's refusal to sanction Trump's boss, Vladimir Putin. Quote, "We spoke to him in consistent and a united way," referring to European nations, "trying to persuade him that now is the time to significantly increase economic pressure on Russia, not to collapse its economy. That's not in our interest, but to make it clear there's no alternative to negotiations. He remains cautious for now, but acknowledges this is a very effective tool." And just to remind you what went down, Russia seized a key lithium deposit in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. Russian forces took control of one of Ukraine's most promising lithium sites located in the Donetsk region. This deposit was previously developed by an American company focused on critical minerals and was considered a vital part of the economic partnership between Kyiv and Washington regarding strategic resources. It contains one of the minerals used to extract the lithium, which is essential for manufacturing batteries for electric vehicles and energy storage systems. Clearly, the Russian-Ukrainian war is increasingly resembling an economic conflict as well. And by the way, this follows directly after Trump said he spoke with Putin and that things were moving in the right direction. Of course they're not. Donald Trump is always lying and always bending the knee to Putin. As Jane Kiev writes, with Russia being allowed to grab Ukraine's massive rare earth minerals troves and China cutting the West off from the same, Western companies finally begin to realize what's going on and why the U.S. allowing China and Russia to take over Africa with propaganda is a catastrophe. It's one of the reasons the USAID program was so important in Africa. As the U.S. pulls out and as Donald Trump doesn't even know what the name of African countries are and his only bearing when it comes to Africa is that he believes there's a genocide against white people in South Africa, which is not happening despite President Ramaphosa showing up at the Oval Office with a white Afrikaner minister of agriculture who's telling Donald Trump it's not happening. Trump pulled all of Biden's resources away from Africa. I mean, just think about this. Biden had Meg Whitman as an ambassador to Kenya because it was important to realize that there are many places in Africa which are the hubs of technological advancement, of AI, of digital revolution stuff. And Donald Trump doesn't realize that. And so China, Russia are moving in there and they're benefiting significantly on the economic front while the U.S. Withdraws and gets weaker. Here's what Zelensky wrote. Putin has already stolen practically half a year from diplomacy, another half a year on top of the entire duration of this war. Russia is not changing its plans and is not looking for a way out of this war. On the contrary, they are preparing for new operations, including on the territory of European countries. That's their principle. The Russians look for where to exploit a weakness. They must see that there is the wherewithal to stop them everywhere. Therefore, more of our joint production, more resilience, more coordination and efficiency of our common security architecture in Europe, he says, is needed. He talked about as well holding a meeting with military and the Minister of Defense discussing the key issues. They talked about the front, primarily in the Pokrovsk direction. There is a major concentration of Russian troops in that area with numerous assaults. I thank all of our units, every warrior for their resilience. The Sumy region, we held a separate discussion on this direction today. A week ago, we assigned our troops specific tasks and designated lines. As of today, those objectives have been fully accomplished. This is important. Russians offensive plan for the Sumy region is failing, and this is thanks to every Ukrainian unit operating in that direction. We are also continuing active efforts as part of the Kursk operation. For nearly 10 months now, the operation has been fulfilling its goal. And you're also hearing stories like this, how another Russian oil tanker exploded, the fourth this year, clearly being targeted by some forces. Kyiv Insider also reports that the Trump regime lifted sanctions on several Russian banks close to Putin. Here's the official Office of Foreign Asset Control memo from the Department of the Treasury removing these sanctions against these Russian banks. So as Lindsey Graham was promising that there would be more sanctions imposed, quite the contrary, the sanctions were indeed being removed. So what was Donald Trump doing while all of this was taking place? Donald Trump, the clownish humiliating president. Here he is selling his new men's cologne for $199 and women's perfume for $249. This is what he spent his time doing yesterday. Play this clip.
Fragrances are here. They make a great Christmas present. I've named them Fight, Fight, Fight because they represent winning. We all want to be winning. We have to win as a nation. We want to win as a family. This fragrance is all about strength and success.
Now, after Syria's president pitched a new Trump Tower in Damascus, yesterday, Donald Trump stated that he would issue an executive order lifting U.S. sanctions on Syria. And I'll share this with you as well. Caroline Leavitt, Trump's chief propagandist, was asked during a press conference yesterday about French President Emanuel Macron characterizing tariffs as blackmail. Here's what she had to say. Here, play this clip.
So President Macron of France earlier today said that tariffs levied by powerful countries are often a form of blackmail. And criticized, the sort of process that's underway. Didn't mention the United States specifically, but said that these tariffs are really hurting developing countries. So there's this big UN conference going on. What do you say to that? What is the president, was he aware of that comment? And do you have any response?
I think the president and the White House would certainly reject that characterization by Prime Minister Macron. Tariffs are an effective use of presidential power to bring back the middle class, to bring back our manufacturing industry, which was the backbone of our American economy and has been hollowed out by globalist politicians who have caved to foreign countries instead of doing what's right for American workers.
Here's what Caroline Leavitt said regarding the U.S. inability to make deals with other countries. As Trump promised, we're on day 81, basically zero deals. Play this clip.
We've been hearing from White House officials for weeks that you're close on trade deals with a number of countries. Can we get any update on which countries will have deals by the 9th and when they're making any announcements?
I'll let the president and the trade team speak on it.
Now, here is Tammy Bruce, the spokesperson for the State Department. She was asked, doesn't it seem pretty weak that Donald Trump claimed that he was making progress with Putin and then Putin engages in a massive strike against Ukraine? And she goes, oh no, Trump's the most powerful man in the world. He's saving the country and he's saving the world. I mean, this is beyond North Korea stuff right here. Here, play this clip.
Russians are stepping up their air attacks on Ukraine, which happen to be larger than ever before. The president on Friday addressed the Ukraine issue, and he said that Putin, quote unquote, respects our country again. Well, hours after that, Putin unleashed the largest ever air attack on Ukraine. Do you think Russia respects President Trump?
I'm sorry, do you think
Russia respects President Trump? And President Trump says that they respect me. Next thing we see hours after that, they launch the largest.
Well, I don't. I've certainly, for obvious reasons, refused to characterize the most powerful man in the world who is saving this country and the world at this time. But I can tell you other things that he has said. Most recently, on the 25th, he said, "I consider him, Putin, a person that's been misguided." I'm very surprised, actually. I thought we would have had that settled, talking about certain issues.
And then Donald Trump wrote that he would just be sending a letter to Japan because he couldn't do a deal with Japan. He goes, to show people how spoiled countries have become with respect to the United States of America, I have great respect for Japan. They won't take our rice. and yet they have a massive rice shortage. In other words, we'll just be sending them a letter, and we love having them as a trading partner for many years to come. That's what he says a deal is, if he sends them a letter just imposing a unilateral tariff on them. Here's David Eby, the premier of British Columbia. Here Eby is talking about bringing the FIFA games more to British Columbia because of the Trump regime's inability or just turning the United States into a complete hellhole. Play this clip.
Additional games in British Columbia would not only be possible, but they would be incredibly welcome. We have 7 games, which is a significant number of games. We'd like to have a lot more. We've actually written to FIFA to say if for whatever reason they need to move games from any other locations, that British Columbia stands ready to host. We can move quickly. We have an amazing team. And we are ready to host additional games here in this beautiful province. So I hope that if it becomes necessary, that they take us up on that. In terms of the budget, a lot of the costs for FIFA are fixed costs. They're related to upgrades to BC Place and getting that venue ready for this caliber of soccer, which means that additional games bring in additional ticket revenue, additional revenue for the province from visitors coming to those games, and so actually help offset some of the costs moving forward. So it would be positive news on a number of fronts if we were able to access that.
And of course, we learned from Israeli media that Netanyahu will be in DC next week celebrating Donald Trump's extortion against Israel, where Trump said that he would withhold military weapons and military support of Israel if Israeli courts continued to prosecute Netanyahu. So that's where we are with the world leaders. You see there for yourself what's going on. Decide for yourself. I'm just giving you the facts, folks. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 6 million subscribers.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.